You are tuned in to Grand Rapids Community Access Television, GRTV, Channel 24, a service of Community Media Center. I am CMC Executive Director Linda Galash with Grand Rapids Mayor Bliss. We welcome you to the March edition of City Connection. It's the live program where you, the citizens of Grand Rapids, can ask your city elected official about local issues. So joining me in the studio today, Mayor Bliss, and we come together to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities and efforts that we have going on in our community. We also will be welcoming to the studio today CEO of the Rapid, and that is Andrew Johnson. He'll be in here shortly at about 15 after the hour. We're going to talk about transportation and mobility here in Grand Rapids and looking at the future and just some of the issues that we're addressing in these current days. You might have a question as well for Mr. Johnson, and you can certainly take part in the conversation later in the show, somewhere around 30 after the program. We'll get going with first a little bit of information from our mayor. So Mayor Bliss, welcome to the program again. We're here again for another month of City Connection and a lot going on. You just delivered your most recent State of the City address.
I did. So that was last Monday, a week ago today. And I had it at the intersection in the lower level, the new space called Elevation. And yes, it was. I was happy to deliver it, but I'm glad it's done. I put a lot of time into writing the speech. In fact, after I gave the speech, I had two people ask me who is my speechwriter, and I remind them I don't have a speechwriter, and that I write it myself, and I pore over it actually, and spend a couple months working on it. But yes, it was a Monday night. Our city manager, Mark Washington, opened us up and gave remarks before I came on and gave my remarks. But yeah, it was a good night.
So a lot of plans for our year are coming up here, and I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about some of the priorities that you mentioned last week.
Yeah, so I tried to give an overview of some of our progress in 2018, but also be really clear that we still have challenges and work to do, and that many of the things that we're working on in years past, we continue to work on. But a few that I highlighted that are going to be priorities, really specific priorities for this year, include the hope to work in partnership with GRPS and the Promise Zone Authority that is currently being created to ensure that Grand Rapids is able to become a Promise Zone.
So tell us about that, because we've learned about this. This was first something that came on the scene, at least on our regional radar, through Kalamazoo.
Yeah, so Kalamazoo for years have had a Kalamazoo Promise. It's a similar premise, but it's structured differently. And so Kalamazoo, 100% of the Kalamazoo Promise is funded by private donors, where under state legislation a couple of years ago, they created an opportunity for cities to become Promise Zones, where it's a mix of private dollars and then public funds through tax capture. And so cities, a small number of cities were invited to participate or to show their interest, and then once it got to that number, it was capped. Well, the city of Grand Rapids was able to get in to be one of the cities that could work on creating a Promise Zone. And what that means is that if we're able to raise enough funds, it can be down the road matched by tax capture, and then it would provide support for any child who graduates from a school in Grand Rapids, any type of school, that they would have access to college scholarships, either for a 2-year community college or a 4-year public university. And so that work will get started this year. My hope is that we're able to establish that. I truly think that it could be a game changer for our community and truly create opportunity for every single child and remove a significant barrier to higher education. So that's an exciting one. I talked in the State of the City about the need for the city to figure out what we're going to do about affordable housing now that the Kent County Land Bank is in the process of being dissolved. We have over 160 properties currently with the land bank, so we need to really come up with a new plan. And then I also talked about the upcoming census. So I just created and launched a complete count committee, and we'll be gearing up in order to prepare for our 2020 census, and our hope is that everyone will be counted.
And I wanted you to go into a little bit more that you talked about during your State of the City address, why that is critical.
You know, it's critical for so many reasons. I think a lot of people don't recognize that many decisions are made with the census data. So a lot of the state and federal dollars that come back to our community, they are allocated based on census data. And those are dollars that support transportation initiatives, housing vouchers, low-income housing tax credits, our schools. The list is really, really lengthy. And so we want to make sure that we're getting funds back to our community to support services that go largely to vulnerable populations. So funding-wise, it's really important, but just as important is our political representation. So the lines are drawn, political lines are drawn based on census. And that will lead us to the number of elected officials we have representing our community, both in Lansing and in the U.S. Congress. And then businesses use census data. Whenever you look at analysis of cities or comparison of cities, they're basing that comparison on census data. Census data is really embedded in so many elements of decision making, both in the public sector as well as the private sector.
So there was some concern recently that there was going to be a question added to the census form this coming year that had to do with, I believe, immigration status, which was maybe felt a bit threatening to some people that would discourage them from filling it out. Can you tell us where that stands?
Yeah, that's still being challenged in court. So a decision hasn't been made yet. Myself, along with hundreds of other cities, have come out against that question being added. A decision hasn't been made yet. We're working really closely with the folks from the Census Bureau who are designated to help in our community around census. And they too have said that a final decision hasn't been made. And on top of that, the next census, there are a number of changes. So in the past, it's been a paper form that we fill out. This year, they're converting to electronic forms. And so you'll be able to go on and submit your census information electronically. So we want to work with the community around that. We'll be able to work with community groups to have kiosks in certain places to help educate people. But we're working really closely with a number of partners in the community to look at what we can do to make sure that everyone is counted, especially in the harder to count areas and with harder to count populations. So we have all the data from our 2010 census, and we can drill down into that data and we can identify what neighborhoods we had low turnout, and then we know that there are certain populations that are just hard to count. So college students, just because they tend to move around a lot, but we want to capture them where they are on April 1st of 2020. We know that people who are homeless or who have unstable housing typically are harder to count population. And then we know that in our African American and Hispanic communities, we tend to have lower turnout.
Okay, so you formed did you call it a council for?
Yeah, well, it's called a complete count committee.
Okay.
Everyone counts Grand Rapids. It's made up of about 70 people. And then we are broken down into 6 work groups. And the work groups are around topics. So we have a media/communications work group, an education work group, community nonprofit work group, we have a government work group, and so we're broken down in work groups, and then each work group has a chairperson. And so the work groups are meeting monthly, and then the chairs of all of the committees will meet monthly as well. And then at the city side, we're looking at what we can do to potentially create some temporary positions over the next year to really take the lead and work with community partners around the census. I was just reading in Cranes that cities all over this country are gearing up for the 2020 census, including our neighbor to the east. And I just read that Mayor Duggan has created also a complete count committee and is looking at hiring 100 people at the city to work in city government, to work with community partners to make sure that people get out and get counted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Important time.
I don't know if we're going to hire 100 people. I wouldn't say that we are, because we have a lot of community partners that we're working with on this. And so we'll have a better sense of what that looks like probably in the next 3 weeks as we lead into the city budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a few of your other priorities, you did mention city budget. That's
Yes.
coming up to be presented soon, but you've also mentioned during your stay at the city parks, mobility, age-friendly community, a lot of things.
A lot of things. So let me touch on those 3. Mobility we can talk about when Andrew is here. But we, last Monday, we came together to summarize the work that's been done with the Age-Friendly Council that I put together probably about 8 months ago. From that work, the council identified 4 areas that we really need to focus on and improve in the city. And so those recommendations will be coming to the City Commission. We had a brief update at our last City Commission meeting. So the work around age-friendly city is continuing, and some of the recommendations will be embedded in our budget. Parks, so I talked about parks at the State of the City, but we also recently had a presentation to the Commission because we are coming up on the end of our parks millage, and so we have to have a conversation as a community on whether we want to have a renewal of that millage. Do we want it to look differently? What are the current needs that we weren't able to get to? And so over the next probably 3 months, we're going to have that conversation, and then the full City Commission will have to make a decision on what to do. And then, let's see, age-friendly, what was the other one that you said?
Mobility, parks, and age-friendly. So I think
parks and age-friendly. Okay,
so I think you
so
did
we
it.
covered those.
I did. Well, we're just another real quick one. Before we take the break, I'm going to give you a small one. City composting facility.
Yes.
Plan for that.
Yes, so that's exciting. So we are moving forward with a third party, and we're taking the old Domtar site, which is where our yard waste site is. So for years while we've had the yard waste site, people can bring their yard waste there, and then we actually pay to have it removed. So we've actually been looking at composting for about 3 years. So since I became mayor, we legalized backyard composting. Maybe that was like the year before I came, but anyway, so we've been really looking at what can we do to support composting in the city. So we put out an RFP. We decided to move forward with a third party who will go on site at Domtar, and they will create a composting site right there. So there's some legal things we have to get through. We have to get approval from DEQ and make sure the site is appropriate. But what that means is folks will be able to continue to bring yard waste and waste to the site that's appropriate for composting. They will compost right there on site. They will give a certain amount, will be available to the community for free. We also will use composting at no cost in our public spaces. Then they'll sell the rest. And so there will be funds generated from it with this third-party company, but there will also be a benefit to the community. Some people have reached out to me and they've asked about curbside composting. Currently, there are private companies that do that in the community, and so I encourage, if you're interested in curbside, there's opportunities for that. At this time, we're not providing that with public funds, but we are moving forward with the creation of the composting site, which is better for the environment. You know, it's economically, it makes a whole lot more sense than paying to have somebody remove the waste, and obviously, it's good for people who can go and get access to local compost.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're up for our first break, and when we come back, Mayor Bliss will be with Andrew Johnson of the Rapid. We'll learn a little bit more at that point. First, this break.
My name is Alina Chiro of the Mercy Health Lax Cancer Center, and I am on the board of the Greater Grand Rapids End of Life Coalition. The End of Life Coalition is a community-wide collaboration of area hospice, hospital, higher education, and service organizations dedicated to increasing awareness and improving end-of-life care within the Greater Grand Rapids community. Every year, the EOLC hosts a conference that highlights a different aspect of end-of-life care to aid and educate the Grand Rapids community in this all too often avoided topic of all our lives. We're excited to announce our 2019 conference held at the Prince Conference Center on Thursday, March 21st. This year's conference is Mental Illness at the End of Life. We have a full lineup of speakers, including Dr. Susan Maxner, Director of the Geropsychiatric Department at the University of Michigan, a panel of local experts and representatives from our local community discussing mental health, durable power of attorney, and aspects of patient advocacy for patients with end-stage dementia. This is an event for professionals in the field with professional CEUs available for those that qualify. You can find out more about this event at our website, www.grendoflife.org, or at the Facebook page for the Greater Grand Rapids End of Life Coalition. You can also register to attend through eventbrite.com by looking for events listed under the Greater Grand Rapids End of Life Coalition. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Vanderhagen with Frederick Meyer Gardens and Sculpture Park. Lots of exciting things coming up here at Meyer Gardens this spring. First of all, we just opened our wonderful sculpture exhibition titled A National Treasure, Fred Meyer, His Collection and Legacy. This sculpture exhibition walks us through Fred Meyer's journey as a collector and really tells the story of how Frederick Meyer Gardens and Sculpture Park came to be. Also coming up is the much beloved Fred and Dorothy Fichter Butterflies Are Blooming exhibition. Every March and April, the Lena Meyer Tropical Conservatory is filled with thousands of butterflies flying freely in this tropical area. This year we're exploring the themes of light and shadow. So come out every March and April to see the wonderful butterfly exhibition and enjoy the warmth and humidity of the Lena Meyer Tropical Conservatory. You can learn more information at meyergardens.org. We hope to see you soon.
Good evening and welcome back. Today we have with us our new CEO and president of the Rapids. So you may know that our prior CEO retired last year, and I serve on the Rapid board, and I was able to be a part of the search committee and then the hiring decision, and Andrew joined. So the board decided to extend the invitation and offer to Andrew Johnson from Illinois. So I'll ask him to tell us a little bit about his history. And he accepted that offer and joined not just the Grand Rapids community, but the Rapid leadership August of last year. So he's officially in his 7th month here in Grand Rapids and at the Rapid. So we're going to learn more about some of the things he's been doing, but also some of the things he plans to work on this year and into the future. So welcome, not just to this show, which is your first time here, but welcome to our community and to the Rapid. It's good to have you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so for people, most people don't know much about you. So why don't we start by talking about your history. You have a long history in public transit. So why don't we start with that? Where'd you come from? What were you doing? And what interested you in Grand Rapids?
I do. For the most part, I'm a lifelong Midwesterner coming from Wisconsin. And I graduated from college way back when with a degree in finance and needed to find a job, and found one doing finance for a small public transportation company. So did that for a few years and then left to go to the private sector, and did that for several years. But a funny thing happened as my company was doing yet another reorganization of all its personnel. I really decided that I missed public transportation. Coolest thing is you're able to look right out your window, see a bus going by, and you see right then and there what the impact is you're having and your work is having on the community. And I went back into public transportation in Wisconsin and never looked back. So I was able to progressively move up through the ranks and wound up in Illinois, and then this excellent opportunity happened in Grand Rapids, and I was lucky enough to be chosen. And it's been a very fast 7 months, I'll tell you.
It has.
Yeah.
So you hit the ground running. I remember one of the things I was most impressed about is that not only when you were a candidate, but right away you got out there and you started riding the Rapid every day. I feel like you're out riding the Rapid, walking the walk, but you also started to identify even pretty quickly, like where are some areas that we could improve and what do you want to work on? So why don't you tell me a little bit, maybe even about like your first 6 months, what it's been like, what you've been spending your time on?
Sure. Yeah, I did start riding the buses right away. I feel it's so important for all management to get a feel for what the product is out on the street. We have to use it. We have to experience it like all of our customers and stakeholders. So started riding and noticed a few things that we could improve on right off the bat. Cleanliness of the buses was a big one. Also, just some of the opportunities for retraining, things like that, to help support our operators in doing their job better. So that was great, and then also connecting with our employees. I wanted to get out there as much as possible, be accessible, be visible, and ensure that people could talk to me about what they felt was important for the Rapid, where they wanted to see our team move forward. And it's been very successful, I think, and a lot of our managers at the same time are following my lead, and they're getting out there and talking to our employees as well.
Yeah. So this year, I know we've already started talking about plans for 2019. What are some of your goals and hopes, and then what can the public maybe anticipate?
Well, the huge news for 2019 is the Laker line. We are opening up the second bus rapid transit line in the state of Michigan. We also have the first. And it will be running from Midtown, Grand Rapids, all the way out to Allendale to the GVSU campus. And that is going to start breaking ground a little later this month with some utility relocation and things like that, and then really get into the full swing of things when Mother Nature lets go of winter. And that is a project that will continue into 2020 and will open up in August of 2020.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yep.
Some of the other things you've already kind of jumped into, you've been in conversations and we're a part of the Ford Challenge. If you want to talk a little bit about that, but then you've also been meeting with and working with the city and Mobile GR. I know we had Josh here last week. Maybe you can talk about some of the synergies there.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. The Rapid and Mobile GR in the city of Grand Rapids has been working very closely on a number of projects. The Ford City of Tomorrow Challenge was a great opportunity because they want to focus on transportation, and that's what gets us excited. So we went through all the project proposals and came up with one that has the potential to provide on-demand service through technology and leverage a lot of the resources that we have in the community, both from the Rapid and other providers. So that's going to get into the full swing very soon. We're very excited about it. And also one of the things that we're going to be doing is taking a look at our entire transit system. We are very excited to partner with all of our system communities in the area and our friends at Mobile GR as well, to take a comprehensive operational analysis of the Rapid and see what we can do with our existing resources to make the system a lot better.
Yeah, so we were in a meeting this morning. There's so at the Rapid there are several subcommittees, and I serve on one of the subcommittees around future planning and innovation. And so we had a meeting this morning. We were talking about the comprehensive Operational analysis. Thank you. I know I'm trying to avoid acronyms on here, but everyone calls it COA. So we were talking about that this morning, and so elaborate a little bit on what that means and why is that such a valuable process, and maybe even, I know since I've been on the Rapid we haven't had one. I'm not sure when the last one was done. So maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I think the last time the Rapid took a really good look at things was about 2005. Okay. And to put it in perspective, a COA, the analysis, is conducted by a consultant. So you bring a consultant in, you do a lot of stakeholder engagement, and you get a lot of input. You take a look at all aspects of your operation and see what you could do better. The real key to doing those, probably every 10 years or so, is to make sure that the transit system is keeping up with the growth of the community and providing the service where it needs to be provided. A lot of things change, and especially in Grand Rapids, so many things are changing. There's been so much explosive growth that the transit system really needs to keep up and make sure it's properly positioned to best serve the entire region, and also lay a groundwork for future mobility needs as we expand throughout the region.
Yeah, so, you know, one thing I know you hear a lot, we've talked about a lot actually, both at the Rapid Board and in subcommittees, is the shift towards how do we make sure that we're offering mobility on demand. And then I know you get asked this question, as do I, like, what is going to happen in the era of potentially autonomous vehicles and new technologies? And you know, now, unlike even 5 years ago, we have Uber, we have Lyft. The city is looking at, you know, car share and bike share, and e-scooters are showing up in cities all over the country. And so talk kind of big picture, kind of the changing mobility world and how you see the Rapid adjusting to that, but also maybe shifting in order to be more competitive, where it's a choice that folks make to use the Rapid versus another alternative.
Yeah, this is such an exciting time to be in the transportation business, because the level of disruption in transportation is unparalleled. We don't, at the Rapid, just want to adapt to the new mobility paradigm. We want to get out in front of it. We're very excited about that. It's not just, oh, where can we put a bus, or you know, where can we put a paratransit van. It's more, how can we seek out a seamless technology platform and then be able to plug in all those different modes like scooters and bicycles and autonomous vehicles and what have you, including buses. And then give our citizens that one platform to plan their entire journey and be able to get where they need to go without having to rely on a car if they don't want to.
Yeah, so we only have just a couple minutes left. So as we close with this final question, I think a lot of people in the community, if they don't use it, they're not really sure what paratransit is. So can you talk about paratransit, the paratransit system we have in our community, and how valuable that is to the people who use it?
Sure. The biggest thing with public transportation is accessibility, and we want it to be accessible to all, because accessibility means employment, housing, you name it. And for those who aren't able to ride the fixed route large buses that you see out there due to a physical disability or what have you, we have something called Go Bus, which is more of a scheduled on-demand type service where we will go essentially door to door and pick up our passengers who can't navigate the fixed route system and get them where they need to go.
Yeah, it's a great system. We have an advisory council that provides us lots of good input on that. And then obviously we work in partnership with disability advocates as well, and they provide a lot of good input. But accessibility is a priority, not just to the Rapid, but obviously at the city as well. And maybe in the next segment we can talk a little bit about that, especially since we are in the midst of winter. I know you have gotten, and I have gotten, a lot of calls about snow and clearing sidewalks. So maybe that can be in the next section that we talk about. But with that, this part of our show is coming to an end, and we'll be right back with you in just a couple minutes.
Did you know that you're watching GRTV right now? That's right, this show, Weekly View, is airing on Grand Rapids' own public access station. And the great thing about a public access station is that you can put your video on GRTV too. Your video about woodworking, politics, movies, comics, parrots, economics, anything. It can all go on GRTV. And if you don't have a video yet, we can help you there too. We have classes that are super cheap and equipment you can use for free. Go to the GRTV website, grtv.org/classes, or give us a call at 616-459-4788 to sign up. You can even stop by for a free tour anytime, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday from 12 to 9. We're located at 711 Bridge Street, right above the Bridge Street Library. GRTV is your place to find local shows made by local producers. And if you turn in your own show, you can watch yourself.
Welcome back to City Connection. We were just learning a little bit about the Rapid with CEO and President Andrew Johnson, talking with the mayor, and you were actually mid-question, so we're going to follow up on that accessibility and clearing snow and that part of the conversation you two are having.
Yes, do you want to start? I mean, I'm happy to start. So this is actually something that we have been talking about at the city for at least 2 months now. Thinking through what we can do to be a partner, not just with the Rapid, but also potentially with Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. and the Grand Rapids Public Schools, since so many of our students use the Rapid bus to get to school. So we're in the process right now of having conversations to see if potentially we could put together a pilot to see what we can do to start clearing, especially our highly used stops. I don't know. I haven't been a part of those meetings. I know our city manager has taken the lead on that, and Josh Naramore was here last month. But is there anything you want to add to that?
Sure. It's a daunting task taking care of all those stops. With the Rapid has over 1,600 stops, and 1,000 of those or so are in the city of Grand Rapids.
Yes.
So taking care of all of them is really a monumental task. And while we are responsive to stop clearing when we are contacted about it, primarily we are relying right now on property owners and others to help us with clearing those. And what we're trying to do is get a group together where we can create a type of program where we are able to have volunteers adopt a stop, that type of thing, and get all of that cleared out. I think this past month especially was a little bit of an outlier, but it really called into focus the need to keep those stops cleared.
Yeah, maybe we can give volunteers who help annual pass to ride the Rapid at no cost.
Yeah, we've
Let's
talked
just
about
brainstorm.
things like that.
And you just said it on TV, so it's nearly official.
You know, our goal first and foremost is to keep everybody safe, both those who are riding the Rapid and those who are helping clear those stops.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that everybody's up to the task.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, we do need to do that because I've gotten a lot of anecdotal type stories of people who have taken it upon themselves to do that and really given their fellow Grand Rapidians a much better chance to catch that bus. So you know, we do take care of one another, and that's great to see.
Andrew,
So
you
true.
mentioned how many, was it 1,600 stops for the Rapid, but through these extreme last few weeks of weather, I'm wondering about maintenance staff and drivers and just all that they've been through over the recent weeks with this weather, and just wondered if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, I can't say enough about our great staff. We kept running through the polar vortex. We did not stop. We were maybe slowed down a little bit on with the snow and ice, but they kept the service going. We even had some of our employees that were going out and picking up other employees so they could get to work, because quite simply in talking to our staff, our employees all get that, you know, despite what was going on with the weather, that our citizens still needed to get to work. They still needed to get to health care and school and whatever else they needed to do. So we had to be there for them, and they take that responsibility very seriously. So I can't say enough about the dedication of the Rapid staff.
Yeah, I'll add my thanks. And I mentioned this actually at the State of the City as well. Even during the last few really severe weather events, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Rapid drivers. I mean, the Rapid drivers didn't take a single day off. They were out there making sure that people could get to work, especially if they couldn't get out of their driveway or down their street. They could still get to the Rapid and get to where they needed to be. And then also the Rapid stepped up and helped, and they were a location for the kids' food basket to come and have food, where families could go there and get access to food. So they were just fantastic. Very, very dedicated. And I saw, especially during the 1 week, some of those poor bus drivers, they could barely get through some of the sections because cars couldn't get up hills. And I mean, if you were out and about on the streets, it was very dangerous. And there they kept at it and were reliable. And
Yeah, we even had a news crew come out and ride with one of our trainees that was only 5 weeks into the job to show that we train in that kind of weather. And this poor guy had to get around cars that were stuck trying to go up hills and all kinds of things. And that's why we keep running, because we do train for that. We do prepare.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you just a little bit about some foundational understanding of the Rapid and who's riding it, because you spent your first few weeks, or maybe it's continued, that you really get out there, you get on and ride some of these routes. Who's not taking advantage of it that should, and what do you think some of those barriers might be that maybe we can address?
Yeah, I still do ride, and I rode here today. Okay. So, we primarily, I think about 80% of our rides are associated with getting to employment. And we also have a great many people who are using it to go shopping and get to healthcare and school. But I think for those who might not have tried it yet, it really comes down to it needs to be the most convenient service possible for them. And that means it needs to be very easy to use. The fare structure needs to be very understandable. I think with our new Wave card, where you can charge up a card and just tap when you get on the bus, that makes that a lot easier. And also making our schedules as easy as possible. We have something called My Stop. It's an app that you can download. It shows your bus in real time. It'll tell you exactly when you need to get out to that bus stop. And it just takes a lot of the guesswork and anxiety out of it. So I think really, as we go into this comprehensive operational analysis, we're going to be looking primarily on how we can make the system even more convenient and more reliable and useful for our citizens and our stakeholders. And we trust that that will, in turn, attract more people to try the Rapid.
Okay. One area, the Silver Line, was extended down Division, South Division, for the purpose of kind of economic development. And I just wanted to get a reading on where things are with that, because the city has put a press release within the last week about really looking into that and why some of that change hasn't happened to the degree that it was anticipated. And I wondered if both of you could address that.
I can start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Silver Line has been very successful. It is our most ridden route, and ridership is growing every year. But it is a team effort to ensure that the development occurs the way it needs to along the corridor. And I think all of the partners in the Silver Line have been a little disappointed with how development has progressed in the corridor, and we want to take a look at how we can make that a better situation. We are still firmly committed to seeing that corridor thrive. And we want to do so in such a way where it's very inclusive, where there's great diversity, both of people and of businesses and what have you. And we want to see building blocks laid for a foundation of greatness for the Silver Line corridor.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I'll add is I too have been disappointed in what was originally kind of projected on what we would see. Especially in the clusters around the stops. But with that said, it's only been the last couple of years that we've seen significant economic growth. It really wasn't that long ago when we were still struggling because of the economic downturn. The pendulum has swung very, very quickly, but it swung, from way over here to way over here. So I think there's an opportunity for us to learn to say, you know, what could we have done differently, but then also to partner with our other cities that, you know, encompass the Silver Line to look at maybe there's something we can do in collaboration. The other thing that I just want to say is that there's also a few other planning processes going on right now, looking at Hartside neighborhood as well as Southtown. So I do think there's some synergy with other planning where we're going to have a much better idea of you know, what the core issues are that potentially we can help resolve to think about how do we encourage development. With that said, we also want to be mindful that we don't create displacement and gentrification and move out people who are living in those neighborhoods. So it's a real tricky balance.
Okay.
I think one of the things to keep in mind also is the Silver Line hasn't even been running for 5 years yet. So it's got a ways to go, and we acknowledge that. But this is just an opportunity to refocus and get the corridor moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We do have a question on the topic of buses, but let me make sure it has to. Okay, it says, my son's bus has been consistently late for more than 20 to 30 minutes for the past few months. So this is really not public transportation, but called Dean, GRPS, school board, et cetera, and gotten little response and no solutions. At the same time, I've heard the same story from other parents. Can our school bus system be held accountable? So this isn't even really a question on your plate, but knowing the same sort of struggles that you've been seeing when we've had these sorts of weather situations, streets clogged with vehicles, what's it take, you know, to be able to kind of, I guess you don't want to be the hammer necessarily, Mayor, and just tow, but there's also safety issues there.
Yeah. So what I would encourage is for this individual to let us know what route. We have a good working relationship with Grand Rapids Public Schools, and then, you know, to me, whenever we're trying to solve a problem, we have to know what the originating issue is that's causing that problem, right? So what's the crux of the issue? Is it that cars are in the way? Is it that, you know, I just don't know what the issue is with that route or others that's creating that delay or that inability to be on time. It could be a whole host of things. And so I think we need to know which route it is. Is it something related to accessibility on a street? And then is there a way that the city can be helpful to relieve that? You know, it's interesting. We recently, during these snowstorms, we had a number of city staff and our fire department going door to door and talking to families about, we need you to move your car and this is why, and we need to clear the streets. And sometimes it just takes a targeted effort to educate people about the implications, and they're more than willing to be helpful. So you can go at it with education and awareness and ask them to come along and be a good neighbor, or you can do it through enforcement. If there's an opportunity to the first one, that's always my preference, especially when it comes to ticketing and people having to pay, especially if they can't afford it. So.
All right. I had one more question there for you that is on the rapid system. A little bit of a description of how does it work when it comes to sort of an entity? You know, there's taxing that brings in some of the funds, the region that it covers, how communities elect to be a part or not, and just a little bit about the territory.
Sure. We cover 6 cities: Grand Rapids, East Grand Rapids, Walker, Granville, Wyoming, and Kentwood. And they choose to be part of a millage that we have. That millage currently pays for about 35% of our operating costs. The rest is picked up by the state of Michigan, about 33%, and then the fare box is 16%, and then we have some contracts and other revenue that makes up the rest. One of the biggest misnomers we have is that the transit system makes a profit. We do not make a profit. We break even every time, but you know, it's a delicate balance to make sure that we can provide all the service that we need to provide with the funds that we have available. And it's been very gratifying that the cities in the Interurban Transit Partnership, as we're known, chose to fund us for 12 years, starting in 2017, and it's really given us that firm footing so we can make plans for the future.
Yeah.
Now,
And
do
can
municipalities come and go from that agreement? Because
No, but I will add, because I think this is another misconception that I'm often correcting is that many people think that somehow the city of Grand Rapids oversees the Rapid. The governance structure is a multi-jurisdictional governance structure. So all 6 cities have seats at the table, and we all appoint a number of individuals based on our population. So yes, we're the largest. We have a number of seats at the table, but we're not the majority. We serve with our other cities, and we don't unilaterally get to make decisions about
Do you
the
have the
Rapid.
same voice? Is it a single power to each voice that's around that
Yes.
table? Okay.
Yep, they're not weighted whatsoever. In fact, our current chair of the board is Mayor Kepley from Kentwood, but we work in partnership with the other cities, and even though we have 1,000 stops, we're the largest city, we have a lot of services, obviously we augment those with our own dollars through Mobile GR.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the show and spending time with us. There's a lot more questions that we could certainly ask and learn, and maybe there's time down the road. Andrew Johnson, CEO of the Rapid, and 7 months in, you're deeply in it, and we learned a lot today. Thanks for being on City Connection.
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. We'll be back after this break.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
A community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
Welcome back to City Connection, and our thanks to Andrew Johnson with Rapid. Just giving us a half hour of his time, and we learned quite a bit. I'm back with Mayor Bliss, and we're going to get into some of the questions that you folks have, but we're going to start with a little bit of update on where the Grand Rapids Police Chief search stands. That's something that's on the desk of the city manager.
It is. Yes, it's a great question, and we can talk about policing, and even this past week, I know I've received lots of calls about this past week with the recent IA investigation. But let's start with the police chief. So as you said, ultimately the city manager gets to make a decision about the police chief. We're working with really an exceptional national firm that has a long track record of finding and placing police chiefs. They've been in town multiple times, meeting both internally and with community stakeholders. We had 2 community meetings, and largely those were focused on what are the core qualities and characteristics we're looking for in a police chief. And so we also had a survey online, which we got quite a few responses to. And so the search firm is taking that information, they're finalizing the profile, they're actively doing recruitment right now. I know that we're still very, very hopeful that we'll be able to interview candidates probably in the next 60 days is my guess. The city manager has been very clear that he wants, once he has kind of the finalists down to however many he decides, I don't know if it'll be 2 or 4 or 5, that he wants the community to meet them and give input. I don't know what that looks like just yet, but he's very committed to that, and I know that we're hoping to identify the right fit, somebody who can come in and work with us and really move forward a lot of our goals, especially around community and police relations.
So the city manager rightly, in my opinion, said that this will probably be one of the most important things that he does as in his first year at least on this job. And there's been some challenges with Grand Rapids community and police relations, including last week at City Commission. I wonder if you wanted to address that a little bit.
Yeah, let me talk about that. So the incident and the concern comes from the incident that happened actually back in November with Mr. Ramos Gomez, who was arrested for attempting to get up to the helipad at Spectrum. And our officers responded, and he was taken to headquarters and interviewed, and had a passport on him and had a driver's license. And then several hours after that, one of our captains, Captain Vanderkoy, reached out to ICE and asked about his status, and then had some emails back and forth with some insensitive language, unprofessional language. So that happened, and from that, Mr. Ramos Gomez ended up being detained by ICE for several days. And so several weeks ago, ACLU filed a FOIA and a complaint, which led to an internal affairs investigation. That is the process that is in place whenever there's a complaint about someone within the police department. The internal affairs investigation goes through a number of processes of review. Once the initial findings are made, it's reviewed by the city attorney, and then if you look at the form, there's spots for signatures, and then labor relations signs off, and then the city manager signs off. Because of the Freedom of Information Act request by ACLU, the findings of the IA report were provided to the public. That doesn't tend to be the process. And so those were shared, and in that, the IA report, they found two things. One, that Captain Vanderkoy was exonerated from racial profiling. That was the core complaint, but was found that he did use culturally insensitive language. Many people in the community were unhappy with those results and came forward to our City Commission meeting last Tuesday, very upset and angry. And I try really hard at our commission meetings to provide this safe space where people can share their opinion and let people speak up until there was so much noise and protest that unfortunately I had to adjourn the meeting early. So that was last Tuesday. A couple things that came out of that. One is that the many people in the community who were at the meeting last week were asking the City Commission to fire Captain Vanderkoy. I should be very clear that the City Commission does not have authority to fire anyone within the police department. We don't oversee the police chief. That is the city manager's job. Even though I know I've had conversations with people, we do not have that authority. The other thing people expressed was, really wanting the city manager to do something. So 2 days later, or maybe even the day after, the city manager did say that he was asking Labor Relations to look into the findings before he did the final review, and with that he put Captain Vanderkoy on administrative leave while the Labor Relations is doing the investigation. So he made that statement last week. And then a couple other things that came. Let me see what else were other core things that came from that.
There's a little bit of dialogue between whether it was the captain passing along information to Information and Customs Enforcement or the officer that was maybe making the arrest, whether some difference.
There is confusion about that. So in the IA report, which by the way, the Internal Affairs report is available online. So you can go on, it's on the city's website. You can go on and read the full report, and it's lengthy. But yeah, let me clarify a few things. So the two individuals that interviewed Mr. Ramos Gomez that morning, they really did an exceptional job, and they recognized pretty quickly that he was a U.S. citizen, that he he was a Marine, he was a vet, he has served overseas, and that he was suffering from PTSD. So one of the officers in the morning, actually there was, in the IA report, you'll see there was a correspondence between that individual and the FBI, saying to the FBI, this is not an FBI issue. You know, he's a Marine, he's a vet, he's struggling with PTSD. So in the morning, it was pretty clear that there was a good understanding of the incident, and there was the passport and the driver's license that were available. I think the disconnect was, and this is purely my opinion, this is not the opinion of the city, but there definitely, I think, was a disconnect with communication, where that information wasn't shared widely with others in the department. So, you know, the ACLU has brought up some really important critical issues, and they brought those to our attention. I think the city manager, as well as the full city commission, we take those concerns extremely seriously. The union on Thursday came out and had a press conference and shared their frustration, feeling like Captain Van Koy is not being treated fairly, and said that they will defend him, which that is their right to do. I've heard from a lot of people who know Captain Van Koy, who think very highly of him. I know Captain Van Koy, I respect him. You know, this is about accountability, and it's about making sure that we are transparent. And, you know, I think for me, during a time that we're working so hard to work on community and police relations, and to be a safe place for everyone in our community, including immigrants. I mean, I talk about we are an immigrant-friendly city. We're working very closely with organizations throughout this city, you know, identifying things that we can do to be inclusive and diverse. We're in the process right now of working on a human rights ordinance that's been before our Community Relations Commission for the last several months. That is going to come before us at the end of March. We already have been looking at our internal policies and procedures related to immigration, and so in light of all that, it's unbelievably unfortunate to me that here we have this incident that is creating significant divide in our community, and my hope is that through this we can come together and make some significant improvements. So.
Part of the comments we're seeing on Facebook right now has to do with ending all cooperation with ICE, the city ending that. Yeah. Tell a little bit about what is the situation or the requirement or the agreement, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So there's I don't have any necessarily details in front of me. I can tell you what our conversation with the Chief Rahinsky has been for a long time, is that we don't proactively do anything with ICE. Of course, under law, we have to respond to a number of things. However, the police department and our city attorney's department, they have been working for about 3 weeks on a specific policy, and I haven't seen that yet. I know that it's in progress. This will likely move it forward a whole lot more quickly, but that will be coming soon.
Okay. Well, this is a conversation we can certainly continue next month. Nothing's going to be fully solved or understood by then, but we are out of time for tonight. Last thing to say, though, is City Commission Night Out is this coming this week, tomorrow, and actually, Commission is holding their the meeting out at what's high school? Is it?
Union High School, right here on the west side.
Fremont.
Yes.
So that opportunity begins at what time?
7.
All right. So we'll wrap up with City Connection for today. The next one is actually April 1st. So we'll be back with you April 1st, City Connection closing out for today here on GRTV Livewire Channel 24.